Hey, how's it going, class? I want to spend some time going over this problem here, the public class AP calendar. It's the first problem of five problems, five total problems, sample FRQ problems that I assigned this week. Now, what I wanted you to do before I posted this video was to go into that Google document that I made, that I shared with you guys, and basically just write any comments, any questions that you might have as you read this problem statement. So right now, as far as solving the problem and submitting your code, I was not looking for that. I was looking for you to read through the problem and then write a minimum of 3 bullet points, 3 comments, or 3 questions on something that maybe didn't make sense as you were reading this. Because my objective now is to try to answer those questions and comments and try to clarify some of this stuff. We don't get to interact person to person in real time as we did in the class. And so when I record these videos, I think it's best that I record them with at least a goal in mind as far as answering questions that you might have had or clarifying anything. So to those of you who posted your comments and your questions, well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. I did also answer those questions. I provided a reply to your questions. Make sure you look through them. It would have been pointless if you simply wrote the questions and never actually looked back at the response. So look through the response. Actually, as a matter of fact, I would suggest that you look through the answer on not just your personal questions, but on those of your classmates, because it's typical, or it's likely, that a lot of you had similar questions. Even if you only wrote 3, the questions of your classmates may have been questions of your own. And so just look through them, read them. The objective here is to help you feel comfortable with problems like the free response questions that will show up in the AP exam. And they're not all going to be the same, but that's the objective. That's why we're practicing and practicing and practicing, because at some point you start getting better and better and better. Now, on this first part of the video, I want to try to minimize the length of these videos. I don't want you to sit down for a good 45 minutes, so I'm trying hard to minimize the length of the videos. As you can see, we're already almost 3 minutes in. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the methods that say implementation not shown. And then if I have a chance, I'll get to the number of leap years method, which is one that you're actually responsible for coding. But because we're writing the code for part A and we want to test it, we want to see if our code works, then we need to at least for our purposes here, have the code for the methods whose implementation is not shown. So one of them is leap year. Another one is first day of year. And then the last one here is day of year. And finally, the method that you're supposed to code in part B of this question is day of week. Again, I want to try to segment these so that they're not too lengthy. And so I'm not going to spend this entire video on everything. I'm just going to focus on a few things here. Now, I quite literally just copied this code down here. So I highlighted the whole thing. I did Control-C to copy. I go to JGrasp, which is the IDE we're using. I go to File, New, Java, and then I do Control-V to paste. Now, you'll notice that it's not indented, but that's a quick fix. If you place a cursor right here on line 7, and you go down to line 69. Oh, now so basically line 7, and then at the end of line 69, you hold down the Shift key, and you press it here. It highlights everything in between. And then you can click on the tab and it indents this for you, which is what we want here. So this is what we're working with. Again, I'm going to copy the code because I've written the code already. I'm going to copy it so that we can see it, but so that I don't spend too much time in this video writing the code. You can pause the video if you need to copy the code. and then write it on your own, you can do that. But I don't want to, again, spend too much time writing, or at least typing in this code. So it's leap year. Returns true if the year is a leap year, false otherwise. So a leap year happens every 4 years, but not strictly speaking. Meaning it's true that almost every 4 years you have a leap year, but not exactly every 4 years. So you have a leap year for sure every 400 years. Also every 4 years, but not every 100 years. And so I'll write it here just to clarify. So for example, the year 2000 was a leap year because it is a multiple of 400. Yes, it's also a multiple of 4, but more importantly, it's a multiple of 400. The distinction here is for example, 2100, which is a year that we haven't got into. I probably won't get to that year. You might. But this is a multiple of 4, but it's also a multiple of 100, and so this is not a leap year. So I guess if I can kind of give you an idea with the years that we've come thus far. So for example, or a little bit more recent years, 1996, for example, is a leap year. It's a multiple of 4. It's evenly divisible by 4. And then you add 2000 is also a leap year. Now 2000 is also evenly divisible by 400. Evenly divisible by 4 and evenly divisible by 100. So bear with me here. The year 2004 is a leap year. 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, so on and so forth. And so you notice that multiple of 4, you're going by 4s, you're going by 4s, you're going by 4s, you're going by 4s. But eventually, you'll get to the year 2100, which is also a multiple of 4. Well, I guess I should say 2096. And then 2100. Now, you're going by 4s, you're going to get to 2100. That's a multiple of 4, but it also happens to be a multiple of 100. And so this is not a leap year. We skipped this one. And so it would not be a leap year. We'd go to the next leap year would be 2104, 2104, and then 2108. What am I doing here? 2108, so on and so forth. And then eventually you'd get to 2200, which is a multiple of 4, but it also happens to be a multiple of 100. So that's not a leap year. And so on and so forth until you get to, so 2200 is not a leap year, 2300 is not a leap year, 2400 is going to be the next leap year. That is a multiple of 100 because it happens to be also a multiple of 400. Okay. I really hope this clarifies what a leap year is and what it's not. If it doesn't, I encourage you to just look up a few, like something online. If I didn't do a good job explaining, you should be able to find something that helps you explain what a leap year is. This is a simple method. You don't have to code this method, but because we're trying to test the methods that we do have to code, we need to actually implement this method so that we can use it. So I'm going to say that if year is a multiple of 400, which we write like this, if the remainder when I divide my year by 400, so we're using the modulus operator, if the remainder when I divide a year by 400 is equal to 0, then I know that year is a leap year. I know that because any number that can be evenly divisible by 400 can also be evenly divisible by 4, or evenly divided by 4. Or suppose that the number is not evenly divisible by 400. Well, we're going to check two conditions. If year can be divided by 4, so if the remainder when I divide my year by 4 is 0, and at the same time, that number, whatever it is, when I divide it by 100 is not, the remainder is not equal to 0. That means that it's not evenly divisible by 100. So a number that you can divide by 4 but cannot evenly divide by 100. So for example, 2100 is a number that you can divide by 4, but you can also divide by 100. And so 2100 is not a leap year. We don't want that number. So in any case, any number that can be evenly divided by 4, but at the same time and cannot be evenly divided by 100 is a leap year. So we're going to return true. And then if the condition is met, if those all conditions, so either if a number is divisible by 400, automatically a leap year, or if these two conditions simultaneously, so at the same time those two are met, then we're going to return true, because whatever year is set here is a leap year, and so we return the true for that. Now, then afterwards, it's only one line of code in the if statement. I don't need the curly braces. Outside of the if statement, I'm going to say return false, meaning if I never return true, then return false. I can test this. Now, there was a question by one of my students that talked about static methods. What's the purpose of declaring the static method? The static method is leap year. Not to be confused with variables, okay? This is not a static variable, it's a static method. We also talked about why we would want to declare a method private or public. So those are questions that arose in the document. Well, private means that you cannot access this method, it's leap year, outside of this class. Now, why that you might want to do that? Well, it's not as simple as just, it's not like just because of this or because of that. It happens to do with what you want to code, what you're coding for, what your end goal is, and sometimes what you want is to write methods that you can only access from your class and that people cannot access outside of your class. Now, that all goes down to what you're writing, what you're developing, and so as a software engineer in the future, you might run into cases where you might want to declare your method public or private. Now, static means that this method belongs to the class. I also gave an answer on static variables in the Google Docs, so just read through those. But what we can do, and a student asked me about the static methods, what I can do is, because all these methods are declared static, if I want to test the methods, I don't have to do them from a separate class. I can code the main method in this class because the main method is a static method. So this has to be a public, declared as public, because it's going to be, well, the main method is always going to be public. Static void main, and then string, an array of string called args. Now, again, the reason I can code the main method in here in APCalendar rather than have to make the APCalendar test class is because all these methods are static and the main method is static. And so you can reference static methods from a static method. So because the main method is a static method and isLeapYear is also a static method, I can reference that method. So I can say isLeapYear, I'm placing a call to the method, or executing the code within isLeapYear. I send it a value. It requires an integer, and so I'm going to send it a number like 2020, which is the year we're in right now. I know 2020 is a leap year. We just had February 29th. We added a extra day to February, and it should return something. Now, if I code it like this and run it, I need to give it a different name because, again, I've coded this already. FRQ, I'll call it APCalendar. I can't give it a different name. Well, I guess I can if I do this. I'll call it demo. Compile. I have to do this again. I need to change this. And then FRQs. So this is the demo, what I'm demonstrating here. It's going to give me errors because there's methods that are specifying something to be returned and they don't have a return statement. I'm just going to write it here. Return 1 for now. Return an integer, so return 1. Otherwise, I can't compile. And then right here as well. I did mention I was just going to copy and paste the code and I didn't. I'll do that to make sure for the next return 1. And then also return an integer, so return 1. So this is just temporary. We need a return statement. 1. If I had the word void right here, this public static void, then this method does not return anything, and so I wouldn't need the return statement. But I have int, meaning I needed to return an integer. I compile fine. Now let's test this. If I run this, I'm going to see nothing. There's nothing here. That is from a previous clear. Let me clear. Nothing. Because this leap year returns a value, true, a Boolean value, which is true or false, but I don't do anything with it. And so I have to say whatever is returned when, whatever is leap year returns when I send it the number 2020, let's print that. So I'm going to say system.out.print whatever is leap year returns when I send it 2020. I'm going to compile. I'm going to run. Okay, true. So good. 2020 is a leap year. Let's try other 2000. The year 2000 was also a leap year. I made a change, so I need to compile and run. True. A value that would not be a leap year would be a multiple of 100. That is not a multiple of 400. And so if I start thinking, okay, well, 100, for example, the year 100 should not be a leap year. I'm going to run, and that's false. Another multiple of 100 that is not a multiple of 400 is the year 200. And that's false. And then I can think of at least a few more examples here. The year coming up is 2100. That is a multiple of 100, but not a multiple of 400. Also false. The year 2400 is a multiple of 400, so that should return true. And so we see this is working. Good. Again, this is not an implementation that you're going to have to code in the APXM, or you wouldn't have to, but we're trying to test this right here in Java, and so we need to code it. Now let me see here, where am I at time with the time here? Okay, time flies. We're at almost 18 minutes. Number of leap years. This is what we're supposed to implement in part A. I'm going to save this for the next video because I want to talk about, once again, the other methods that we are not supposed to implement, but that we need to use within our implementation. Okay, let's look at first day of year. Returns the value representing the day of the week for the first day of the year. 0 denotes Sunday, 1 for Monday, all the way up to 6, which is Saturday. Now let me explain this. There was some questions on how what this is supposed to do on your comments there on the Google document. So the first day of the year, if I click on my calendar down here, in 2020 is January 1st, and it falls on a Wednesday. Now Wednesday would be, if we start with 0 at Sunday, 0, 1, 2, 3. It would be the third day of that week. So Wednesday is always, it's basically you're coding Wednesday to be the number 3, and then Thursday the number 4, Friday the number 5, and then Saturday the number 6. Again, we start at 0. And so first day of the week, if you give it a year, like you give it the year 2020, it should return the number 3, because in the year 2020, January 1st falls on a Wednesday. Now let's look here again. The year 2019, for example. What day does the January 1st fall on in the year 2019? Well, we'd come in here and we'd say it's a Tuesday, and so that would be 0, 1, 2. It should return the number 2. And let me go back to 2018 and look at January 1st of 2018. That would be a Monday, so 0, 1. Now you start kind of seeing a pattern. It was 3, 2, 1. So we're decreasing as we go back 1 year, we decrease 1 to the left. Now to implement this, I'm going to copy the code. I don't want to spend too much time writing this. This video is already getting quite lengthy here. I actually have two implementations. I made one, this is a little bit more challenging, that went all the way back to the year 1600. So 1600 right here, I made an array. I specified its size, so on and so forth. But I basically populated two arrays, one with the year, so like the year 2020, 2019, 2018, if I'm going back. And then the other array populates the number of the first day of January 1st, of the first day of that year, in terms of what day of the week it is. Now, you can see this. You're by all means, if you want to pause the video and copy this, go ahead. But this is, I think, a little easier to explain, and I'm going to spend more time on this one. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to copy this. And so I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it in our demo here. And then I'm going to explain this one instead. So years is an array that has the years starting with the year 2000. On the other example that I was talking about, it would have started at 1600. And it would have gone 1600, 1601, 1602, 1603, so on and so forth. It's like 420 years. Or 450, yeah, 420 years, which you don't want to hard code this way. It would be just too many entries, way too many. So I automated that process. Okay, so we have that up to 2020, which is the current year. And I actually did take some time to look up the first day of each year. And so in 2020, now this last value corresponds to that year, okay? The second to the last value, 2, corresponds to the second to the last year. So they're kind of matched up. 2020, the first day of the week is the 3, which corresponds to a Wednesday. 2019, 2, which corresponds to a Tuesday. 2018, a 1, which corresponds to a Monday. 2017 is a 0, which corresponds to Sunday. So January 1st, 2017 was a Sunday. And then you'll notice that every leap year, you actually, you're decreasing by 1, but every leap year you decrease by 2 instead. So instead of it being 6, you jump from 0 to 5. So 2016 is a 5 because that's a leap year. And then, which by the way corresponds to a Friday. And then Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and then you go to Sunday, so on and so forth. I looked these up, so you can look them up. Again, you don't have to do this, but we're trying to test the other methods, and we're going to have to use these. So I looked them up. It was not fun. I made a variable called day because we're supposed to return the first day of whatever year is sent. And so, like, say somebody sends the year 2003. Well, 2003 would be 1, 2, 3, this value, which is a Wednesday. So the January 1st, 2003 was a Wednesday. And so that's where whatever I pick out of this array is going to be stored in this variable day. And so basically what I did, here's where all the magic happens. I basically traversed this array, the years array. That's what this for loop is doing. We've spent a lot of time on this, so I'm not going to explain how the for loop does that. And I said if years of I, and so I is 0 and then 1 and 2 and 3, which means that if the element in years, so if 2000 or 2001 or 2000 equals the year that is sent as a parameter, so somebody sends maybe 2005. And so if they match, or when they match, because they will, then day is going to equal first days. So from my array, I'm going to pick out that element that corresponds to that year. And so for example, say somebody sends 2002. Well, that would be the index, the element indexed at 0, 1, 2, right? And so when I is 2, years of 2 is going to be 2002. It's going to equal 2002, which was sent. And so day is going to be first days of I, which is 2, and so first days of I would be 2. That was a lot of 2's. I really hope that's not confusing, but basically it would return the number 2. Okay, that's how this one works. I'm going to compile and test it. And before I look it up in the calendar, let's pick a year here. 2008, for example. Let's figure out what the first day in 2008 was. I'm going to test it right here in my main method. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste. I'm going to change this to 2008. And the name of the method is no longer is leap year. That's not the one I'm trying to test. I'm trying to test this method called first day of year. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to paste right here. So what's the first day of the year 2008? We're going to run it. And we get a 2. Now again, Sunday is a 0, Monday is a 1, Tuesday is a 2. So let's go to 2008 in my calendar. This shouldn't take too long here because I can do the following. 2008. There it was. And let's look at January 1st, and that's a Tuesday. Perfect. This works good. Okay, finally, in this video, we're going to look at the last method here that whose implementation is not shown, but we're going to have to use it in the next 2 methods. Okay. Deleting stuff that I shouldn't be. Okay. Okay, let's look at this. Day of year. Returns n, where month, day, and year specify the nth day of the year. Returns 1 for January 1st. That would be month 1, day 1 of any year. And then precondition, the date represented by month, day, and year is a valid date. Meaning if somebody sends a month of October and a day of 33, well, we don't have to code for that. That would not happen. There was a question talking about preconditions. What are they? Do we have to code for them? And the answer is no. A precondition is basically a way for you to just code without worrying about a specific scenario. Like, say somebody sends for the day, they send the day 50, but there's no month that has the day 50, and so maybe your code would break. Like what you wrote as your code, it would break. It wouldn't send a correct answer because it's not expecting a value of 50 for the day. And that's what these preconditions are supposed to be for. It's so that you don't have to worry about a scenario that is not a valid scenario, that is not a realistic date, and so that you don't have to code. Like, you don't have to verify that the date that is sent is a valid date. So you can just assume that they're going to send you an adequate date. And so let me, once again, just copy and paste this so that I don't spend too much time on the actual writing of the method. Rather, maybe just instead explain the method. So it's this method right here. I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to paste it right here. Let me explain how this works. So I have day of year. There was a couple questions on this. Let me explain what they're trying to do. Okay, say somebody sends a date. So the one in the example was March 1st, 2020. Let's just say 2020. March 1st, 2020. The question is, what day of the year is March 1st, 2020? Now, what that means is, well, what day relative or as it relates to 356 days in a year. For example, December 31st would be the day in the year that it corresponds to 356, which is basically equivalent to adding all these values up. Because what I have here is I have 2 arrays, one for a leap year and one for a year that is not a leap year, and it has a number of days in each month. And so say somebody sends December 31st, 2020. Well, 2020 happens to be a leap year, And so that would be the day of the year that corresponds to adding all these values up. 357, I believe, probably, for a year that is not a leap year. 356 for a year that is a leap year. And so March 1st, well, here's January. We're looking at a leap year because it's 2020. January, February, and then March. And so March 1st would correspond to 31 days in January plus 29 days in February. That's 60. Plus the first day in March, which is 61. And so it should return the number 61. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to make a variable that adds the days. So say somebody sends the month March. Well, I would want to add the days in January and the days in February. And I'm going to store them in this variable, add days. I'm also going to make this I value, which is for the index location. It starts at 0. So 0th element, first element, second element, third element, all the way up to the 11th element, because there's 12 months in a year. And I'm going to say that while I is less than month minus 1, which is something I had to test because I wasn't getting the right answer. If month is the month 3, March is the month 3, that would be the elements 0, 1, 2, right? 0, 1, 2. And so whatever month I get, I want to subtract 1 from that. So if the month is 3, I want to subtract 1 to get the index value. So 0, 1, 2. And I'm going to say while I is less than 2, and that's because I only want to add the 0th element and the first element. I don't want to add the second element. If it's leap year, we're going to add to add days, we're going to add from the leap year array. If it's not a leap year, so notice how I'm using a method that has been coded already within the class. So if it is a leap year, take the element from leap year at the ith location, in this case the 0th element, add it to the days, and then we're going to take the second element, add it to days, those would be those two, and that's it, when month is 3. But if it's not a leap year, else we're going to take the elements from the non-leap year array, which is this one. So we still do the same thing, add the first 2 elements only. 0, I would be 0, I would be 1, and that's where we would stop, because 3 minus 1 is 2, and we want to go until I is less than 2, so 0 and 1. We increment I, we're in a while loop. If we don't put the I++, we engage in an infinite loop. And then at the very end, I'm going to say, well, whatever add days was, so if I added 31 and 28, or in the case of the year 2020, I added 31 and 29, then I'm going to add whatever day in March we're at. So if it's 1, that's the first day in March, I would just add a 1 here. And so that would be 31 plus 29 is 60. So 60 plus the day in March that I'm interested in, 1. If, for example, somebody sent March 7th, well, then that would be 60 plus 7, which is 67. So March 7th is the 67th day of 2020. Along the calendar. If you count the days on the calendar, and let me show you what I mean by that. Right here, for example, if I start here with, in January 1st, I start with, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, you go all the way to 31. So, and then you go to February, and then you go, okay, well, we're in February now, 32, 33, 34, 35, so on and so forth, all the way to 60. And then we go 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67. So March 7th is the 67th day starting from the beginning of the year. And let me test this. I need to print whatever the method returns. It's going to return an integer. Let me copy the heading here. Day of year. And I need to send it a month. Okay, well, let's do March, the 3rd month. We'll do the first day in March 1st of the year 2020. And notice that this right here determines whether I'm going to use the leap year array or the non-leap year array. I'm going to compile and run. And I get 61. Now let's look, for example, October. Now there's no way to actually verify unless counting or looking it up. But October 19th, which happens to be my birthday, of 1987. I don't know why I'm sharing that with you guys. But in any case, I'm lying here. I'm going to compile and I'm going to run. So October 19th, 1987 is the 292nd day of that year. Basically, after 1986, 292 days elapsed before I was born. You can test you can test your date, your birth date. But that's basically the three methods that you're not responsible for, that you're not asking to code. They're not asking you to code these methods. At least you wouldn't in the free response portion of the exam, but they are methods that we need to use. We need to implement them correctly in day of week, which is supposed to be implemented in part B, and in number of leap years, which is supposed to be implemented in part A. So I'll stop here with this. In the next video, I'll actually go through part A and part B of this free response question.